Richard Westbrook, a self-assured millionaire with a penchant for dramatic gestures, clutched an exquisitely embossed invitation as he contemplated the evening ahead. The invitation, dispatched by his former fiancée, now known as Sophia, was a deliberate provocation. She had abandoned him for another, and now her wedding summons felt like an audacious reminder of her triumph. As Westbrook's eyes lingered on the elegant script, his friend Julian Cross, ever the candid observer, remarked on the sting of the gesture, with a whistle and a muttered exclamation, "That's a particularly vicious blow." "Are you really going to attend alone?" Julian prodded, nudging him to consider a grander plan. Westbrook's dry laugh resonated in the quiet of his upscale office. "Attending in solitude would only underscore my defeat. I must present someone extraordinary. A companion who would not only enhance the spectacle, but also underscore that I have long moved beyond past heartaches." The idea of recruiting an unconventional guest took shape in his mind, one that would undoubtedly provoke Sophia and render her smug satisfaction even more bitter. Later that day, as Westbrook departed his stately office, his thoughts still oscillating between vengeance and self-reinvention, he noticed a young woman seated on the pavement outside a modest bistro. Despite the grime that marked her clothes and the weariness etched into her posture, there was an undeniable allure to her striking features. Her hair, untamed and falling in chaotic strands over her shoulders, framed a face that bore not the pleading eyes of one in need, but rather a defiant, resolute spark. Driven by an impulsive curiosity, Westbrook approached her. With his hands casually tucked into his designer trousers, he addressed her with a mixture of authority and intrigue. "Hey there." The woman's gaze, sharp and assessing, met his as she silently measured his worth. After a brief, calculated pause, a slight smirk played upon her lips as she inquired, "What is this all about? Is it some sort of social experiment? Am I to answer your query and, depending on my response, either be tossed a coin or shooed away?" Her tone was a heady blend of humor and skepticism that disarmed him immediately. Unperturbed, Westbrook leaned in slightly and offered, "Accompany me to an exclusive event tonight? A wedding, no less. I promise to provide you with enough financial means to transform your life completely." Her eyes sparkled with amusement as she retorted, "Enough to change your life, you mean? Are you always armed with such theatrics, or is it merely an act to portray yourself as some benevolent savior?" Her sarcastic lilt underscored a confidence that seemed to challenge every word he had uttered. Maintaining his composure despite the unexpected twist, Westbrook explained, "All you need to do is dress elegantly, wear a smile, and accompany me for the night. It will be a spectacle to behold." The woman's head tilted slightly as her amusement deepened. "So you desire me to be your decorative accessory for the evening?" Her voice dripped with irony as she stepped closer, intentionally narrowing the gap between them. "If you find my presence unappealing, I suppose I could always decline, but I suspect you'll regret not seizing this opportunity," she added with a confident chuckle. Westbrook was momentarily taken aback by the reversal of roles. "Curious?" he ventured cautiously. "Curious about what exactly?" With a subtle, enigmatic smile, the woman, now introducing herself as Evelyn, responded, "I'm intrigued to witness how far a man such as yourself is willing to go to reclaim lost pride." For a heartbeat, Westbrook stood silent, struck by the mystery that enveloped her. Who was this captivating Evelyn, whose presence transformed the mundane into an exhilarating challenge? As if answering his silent inquiry, Evelyn gracefully settled into the back seat of his sleek black luxury sedan, her gaze fixed on the shimmering city lights racing past the window. Her demeanor was utterly composed. She neither trembled with anxiety nor exhibited any trace of apprehension. Instead, she simply observed with a calm that belied the extraordinary circumstances of the evening. Westbrook, sitting beside her, was acutely aware of her serene confidence, a stark contrast to his own inner turbulence. Breaking the quiet, he asked, "Are you not even curious about where we're headed tonight?" Evelyn's lips curled into a faint, mischievous smile as she replied, "I suppose somewhere opulent, befitting the grandeur of the occasion." Westbrook arched an eyebrow in response. "And you? Aren't you curious at all? Should I be concerned about your detachment?" Evelyn's gaze met his, her voice cool and measured. "You discovered me on the street, offered me an opportunity, and here I am. I find it hardly unusual." Her candor made him laugh, easing the tension momentarily. "No, I'm not planning any nefarious schemes. "No human trafficking, I assure you," he said with a wry smile. Their banter continued as the car glided smoothly toward their destination, a stately venue nestled in the heart of the city. Upon arrival, they stepped into an opulent building that housed a lavish spa, renowned for its transformative services. Without hesitation, Evelyn followed Westbrook inside, where the fragrant aroma of premium perfumes mingled with the soft hum of busy stylists. "I require a complete transformation," Westbrook commanded to the attentive staff. "Hair, makeup, attire, leave no detail untouched." Before long, Evelyn was seated in a plush styling chair, her initial disheveled appearance beginning to yield to the skillful hands of her beauticians. A confident stylist remarked, "If you reconsider, now is the perfect moment," to which Evelyn replied coolly, "I anticipated a more impressionable subject, but I seem to have my own mind." Westbrook, arms crossed, observed the process with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. As Evelyn's transformation unfolded, he found himself drawn not only to her emerging beauty, but also to the enigmatic calm she maintained. Hours later, when Westbrook returned to the spa, he was struck by the metamorphosis before him. Evelyn now bore the refined elegance of a woman reborn. Her unruly hair had been tamed into lustrous waves, her complexion was radiant, and her makeup accentuated her eyes with an artful sophistication. A fitted dress hugged her figure perfectly, and high heels elevated her poise. Yet what startled him most was her unruffled expression, as if she had seen this transformation countless times before. "Who exactly are you, Evelyn?" Westbrook asked, his voice a mixture of wonder and determination. Evelyn, retrieving a designer purse from the counter, replied with quiet assurance, "I'm someone who seizes a good opportunity when it presents itself." Together, they embarked on a journey in the sleek sedan, its path illuminated by city lights as they neared a grand ballroom. Outside the venue, a procession of limousines and luxury cars spilled out glittering jewelry and designer ensembles onto a red carpet, while paparazzi and society reporters captured every detail of the extravagant affair. As Westbrook stepped out, adjusting his tailored suit with deliberate grace, he extended a hand to Evelyn, whose acceptance set off a ripple of astonishment among onlookers. Whispers filled the air as curious guests speculated about the identity of this intriguing companion. Evelyn, unfazed by the attention, maintained a serene composure, her gaze steady and assured as she followed Westbrook into the hall. Inside, under the radiant glow of crystal chandeliers, the atmosphere buzzed with the murmurs of high society. It wasn't long before Westbrook's eyes locked onto Sophia, dazzling in an ethereal white gown and accompanied by her meticulously chosen partner, Jeffrey Townsend, whose traditional charm was unmistakable. Their brief exchange was laced with tension and mutual recognition of past grievances, yet the moment became even more charged when Sophia's eyes met Evelyn's, freezing in an expression that blended shock, envy, and calculation. As Westbrook approached, he greeted Sophia in a tone both cordial and icy, introducing Evelyn with an understated flourish. The ensuing conversation was punctuated by curt pleasantries and a palpable undercurrent of unresolved emotions. Sophia's discomfort was evident, especially when Evelyn, with an impeccably firm handshake and a dignified smile, introduced herself to the assembly. In that charged moment, Westbrook's carefully orchestrated plan to reclaim his pride, and perhaps to incite a spark of retribution, had taken on a life of its own, setting the stage for an unforgettable night. Richard Westbrook's eyes narrowed as the elegant woman across from him, Sophia, his former love, uttered with a delicate tone, "I hope you'll be very happy." The remark, laced with both genuine sentiment and an undercurrent of quiet reproach, left him momentarily frozen in thought. In the charged atmosphere of the grand ballroom, every word was a calculated move, every pause pregnant with unspoken implications. Sophia's voice, soft yet piercing, carried a weight that seemed to echo off the ornate walls. "Marriage is a serious commitment," she continued, a note of bittersweet reminiscence coloring her tone. "I was once engaged myself." At that moment, Westbrook felt an icy shudder travel through him, as if her words were a subtle reminder of old wounds and shattered dreams. Across the room, Sophia's fiancé, Jeffrey Townsend, exchanged furtive glances with her. His eyes held a mixture of disbelief and quiet disdain as he inquired in a measured voice, "Really?" attempting to cloak his inner turmoil with a veneer of casual indifference. Meanwhile, Evelyn, who had once been an unremarkable figure on the streets but now shone with a refined, almost ethereal allure, nodded gracefully while taking a delicate sip of champagne, her expression unreadable, yet hinting at layers of hidden depths. As the conversation unfolded, Westbrook's mind raced with conflicting emotions. His own heart was caught in the crossfire of pride and vulnerability. The subtle barbs in Sophia's tone were not lost on him, and they stirred memories of a time when he had been certain of his own worth. Yet the transformation of Evelyn before him, her unexpected presence now commanding attention, only deepened his internal conflict. Her calm, assured smile seemed to defy the very circumstances of her past, and as she spoke, her voice was both enchanting and enigmatic. In a moment that shattered the tense silence, Evelyn reached out and lightly touched Westbrook's arm. "Would you like to dance?" she asked in a tone that blended mischief with challenge. The invitation, though simple in its wording, carried with it an unspoken dare. A dare to step into a world where vulnerability and control coexisted in a delicate balance. Westbrook blinked in surprise, momentarily disarmed by the unexpected intimacy of the question. "Dance?" he repeated softly, his voice betraying both curiosity and an inkling of amusement. "Or would you prefer to remain here, watching your former lover struggle to pinpoint the origins of our acquaintance?" His quiet chuckle filled the space between them, a sound that was both teasing and laden with the weight of old scores. Evelyn's eyes twinkled as she accepted his challenge. "Let us dance," she replied, her voice imbued with a confidence that was as captivating as it was disarming. With that, the pair moved away from the scrutinizing crowd, leaving Sophia visibly unsettled in their wake. The orchestra's melody swelled, carrying them onto the dance floor, where every step became a silent contest of wills. Westbrook locked his gaze with Evelyn's, attempting to unravel the layers of mystery that shrouded her. Her eyes, dark and unfathomable, held secrets that she guarded well, yet her smile hinted at an intimate familiarity with the high society world she now navigated with ease. As they glided across the polished floor, Westbrook murmured under his breath, "You keep surprising me." His words, though soft, carried the weight of both admiration and a simmering irritation. "Is that meant as a compliment or a subtle rebuke?" Evelyn countered, arching an eyebrow with playful defiance. "I have not yet decided," he admitted, his voice a blend of amusement and uncertainty. Her laughter, light and melodic, mingled with the strains of the orchestra, and for a brief moment, the dance became a battleground where pride and passion intertwined. Before long, a group of distinguished businessmen approached the pair, their champagne glasses raised in congenial greeting. One of them, extending a hand with a courteous smile, remarked, "Westbrook, you finally decided to grace us with your presence at a social affair." Westbrook returned the handshake with a firm grip, his tone measured as he replied, "I thought it would be interesting to celebrate this union." Their attention, however, quickly shifted toward Evelyn, whose enigmatic presence was impossible to ignore. "And who might your charming companion be?" another man inquired, his curiosity evident in his tone. Without missing a beat, Evelyn stepped forward and extended her hand naturally. "Evelyn?" She introduced herself with a poised smile that belied the mystery behind her origins. The businessmen exchanged thoughtful glances. One of them observed, "Your face seems oddly familiar." Evelyn's smile deepened, a hint of a secret hidden behind her calm exterior as she replied, "Perhaps we met at a previous gathering." The conversation lingered on this cryptic note, leaving the assembled magnates both intrigued and perplexed. Not long after, a tall, impeccably dressed man approached. Dorian Blackwell, known for his astute business acumen and an uncanny ability to read people, directed his attention at Evelyn with sincere interest. "Evelyn, isn't it? You seem remarkably at home here," he commented. Evelyn met his gaze with cool confidence and a polite smile. "Perhaps because I am," she replied succinctly. Dorian's laughter, warm and approving, filled the brief silence that followed. "And what, pray tell, is your association with Westbrook?" he pressed, glancing meaningfully at his companion. Evelyn cast a playful look in Westbrook's direction before responding, "Just an intriguing partnership." The remark, delivered with a measured cadence, elicited a flash of irritation in Westbrook's eyes. Unable to bear the feeling of losing control over the unfolding narrative, Westbrook interjected by smoothly reclaiming Evelyn's champagne glass and summoning a waiter. "If you'll excuse me, I must momentarily claim my companion," he declared, his voice tight with restrained frustration. Guiding her toward a more secluded corner of the ballroom, he demanded in a low, tense tone, "What exactly are you doing?" Evelyn's response was as enigmatic as ever. "Simply indulging in some fun," she replied with a subtle smile. "After all, wasn't it part of the plan to incite a reaction from your past?" Westbrook's eyes narrowed, his pride pricked by her insinuation. "You play your part exceptionally well," he conceded with a short laugh, though his tone hinted at a struggle to maintain his composure. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Sophia, whose presence added a new layer of tension. Appearing beside them, she remarked with a measured politeness, "I trust you are enjoying the evening?" Evelyn answered crisply, "Most assuredly." Sophia's gaze was sharp as she added, "I feel as though we have encountered each other before." Evelyn's shrug and a quiet, enigmatic smile did little to allay the suspicion in Sophia's eyes. "The circles of high society are indeed small," she murmured, leaving Westbrook to ponder the implications. Later, on a private balcony where the chill of the night contrasted with the sparkling city lights, Sophia confronted Westbrook in earnest. "Who exactly is she?" she demanded, her arms crossed as she tried to mask her inner turmoil. Westbrook maintained a carefully neutral expression as he replied, "She is my companion." Sophia's dry laugh cut through the cold air. "Do not treat me as a fool. I am well aware of the type of woman you choose to display at such events." Her words stung, forcing Westbrook into an uncomfortable silence. "What is it that you truly wish to know?" he finally managed to ask, his voice low and guarded. Sophia's eyes gleamed with a mix of indignation and determination. "Where did she come from?" she pressed, her voice laden with accusation. For a long, heavy moment, Westbrook said nothing, silence that spoke volumes. Finally, Sophia whispered, "My God, you found this woman on the street, didn't you?" Westbrook's silence confirmed her suspicions, and the revelation hung in the air like a specter of betrayal. "Unbelievable," Sophia scoffed, her tone both incredulous and resentful. "You dare bring a street dweller here to provoke me?" Westbrook's retort was swift and firm. "I brought forth a confident, intelligent woman who fits in perfectly, a woman who defies the boundaries of her past." Sophia's eyes narrowed dangerously. "She does not belong in this world, or does she?" Her challenge was as sharp as a razor's edge. The tension escalated until Sophia, with a final, ominous warning, strode away toward the ballroom, leaving Westbrook to grapple with his doubts. Meanwhile, Evelyn moved among the guests with an effortless grace that belied the storm she had ignited. Every eye followed her as she passed, a living enigma in the midst of glittering wealth and superficial gaiety. In a brief moment away from the crowd, Evelyn exchanged cordial compliments with Sophia, a dance of words that was as polite as it was barbed. "You dance well," Sophia remarked, to which Evelyn replied simply, "Thank you, and you speak with equal finesse." Later, as the night drew on and the city's lights shimmered like scattered diamonds on a dark canvas, Westbrook and Evelyn found themselves alone in his sleek car. The atmosphere was heavy with unasked questions and unspoken truths. "You want to ask me something?" Evelyn ventured softly. Westbrook, his eyes fixed on the road, finally posed the burning question, "Who are you, truly?" Evelyn relaxed into her seat with a measured calm. "I am the woman you chose to leave an indelible impression on, one who has always lived beyond the confines of labels." Her words, delivered with a quiet intensity, confirmed what Westbrook had long suspected. She possessed knowledge and experience that defied the assumptions of her past. As the car came to a halt outside his hotel, Westbrook turned to her and said in a low, determined voice, "I had you investigated." Evelyn's reaction was one of mild amusement rather than shock. "And what did you find?" he pressed. With a small, enigmatic smile, she replied, "Nothing at all. I simply do not exist in any records. It appears I have erased my past entirely." Her tone was light, yet every word carried the weight of a carefully guarded secret, leaving Westbrook to ponder the true nature of the mysterious Evelyn. Richard Westbrook's heart pounded with a mixture of frustration and fascination as Evelyn's cool voice cut through the silence of their late-night drive. "I don't like mysteries," she said, her tone measured, yet edged with defiance. For a heartbeat, Westbrook wondered if her words masked a hidden vulnerability, but before he could probe further, she continued, "Then maybe I'm not the right person for you. With that, she unlatched the car door and stepped out, disappearing into the hotel's entrance without a backward glance. Westbrook remained in the car for several long moments, his knuckles whitening around the steering wheel as he processed her departure. He knew in his gut that she was concealing something vital, something he was determined to uncover. Outside, Evelyn paused by the door, leaning against it as if gathering her scattered thoughts. Her pulse raced beneath the veneer of calm, and she could almost feel the weight of suspicion emanating not only from Olivia, but also from Westbrook himself. In the reflective surface of the hotel's lobby, she caught a glimpse of her transformed self. The luxurious dress clung impeccably to her figure, and her makeup, once flawless, now appeared as a mask that barely concealed the depths of her true identity. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if the woman in the mirror was someone entirely different, or perhaps she was finally emerging as the person she had always been meant to be. Evelyn reached into her bag and produced a disposable phone. With swift, deliberate taps, she sent out a short message, an inquiry that would set off a chain of investigations. Within seconds, a terse reply buzzed on her screen. "Then it's time for you to decide your next move." She deleted the message as quickly as it arrived and exhaled a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh. Deep down, she knew that her carefully guarded secret was teetering on the edge of exposure. Westbrook, known for his need for absolute control and direct answers, would not allow this enigma to linger unchallenged for much longer. The following morning, as Westbrook sipped his meticulously brewed coffee in his sleek office, his mind was still haunted by the events of the previous night. The image of Evelyn, her defiant eyes and the sparks of vulnerability hidden behind them replayed in his thoughts incessantly. Determined to confront the mystery head-on, he picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "I need you to look into someone for me," he said, his tone devoid of any pleasantry. On the other end, a deep, amused chuckle resonated before the voice replied, "It's been a while, Westbrook. Who's the target this time?" "Evelyn," Westbrook responded after a brief pause. "No last name." The investigator's tone hinted at intrigue as he continued, "Give me 48 hours and I'll uncover everything. Where she came from, who she really is, and why it seems she's hiding something." Satisfied with the initial response, Westbrook leaned back in his chair, steeling himself for the inevitable collision between his insatiable curiosity and her elusive past. Later that day, after a whirlwind of meetings and endless paperwork, Westbrook decided it was time to find Evelyn. He knew she was still staying at the hotel he had reserved for her, and without hesitation he rode the elevator to her floor. Approaching her door, he rapped sharply, the sound echoing down the quiet corridor. A brief moment later, the door creaked open. "Were you expecting someone?" Westbrook asked, his arms folded in a posture that mixed authority with genuine curiosity. Evelyn's expression was calm, barely a flicker of surprise registering on her face. "Not particularly," she replied coolly, stepping aside to allow him entry. As he walked into the modestly arranged room, Westbrook's eyes scanned every detail. The neat arrangement of furniture, the absence of any evidence that she had once lived on the streets. The space was immaculate, betraying no sign of the turbulent past he suspected lay beneath her sophisticated exterior. Taking a seat on a plush sofa opposite her, Westbrook's gaze bore into Evelyn. "Have you always been this straightforward?" he inquired, a trace of amusement mingling with his impatience. Evelyn's lips curved into a wry smirk as she countered, "You don't like small talk, so why waste time with it?" Her tone was light, yet every word seemed carefully calculated. Westbrook's demeanor, however, turned serious as he leaned forward. "I want to know the truth, Evelyn," he declared firmly. Her eyes flashed with a mixture of defiance and reluctant honesty. "The truth about what?" she challenged. "About you." Westbrook's fists clenched slightly, the tension in his voice unmistakable. "No," he said slowly, "about you. Who are you, really? You came out of nowhere, accepted my offer without hesitation, and now you act as if you already belong to this world. Yet there's not a single record of your existence." A heavy silence fell between them as Evelyn's gaze dropped. "And what if I don't want to tell you?" she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Westbrook let out a humorless laugh, the sound tinged with the bitterness of unmet expectations. "Then I'll find out on my own," he asserted, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. After a long pause, Evelyn exhaled slowly and met his gaze. "Fine, Westbrook," she began, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. "I'll tell you a little bit." She shifted her weight as if bracing herself against painful memories. "I grew up in a world not so different from yours. One of luxury, endless parties, and powerful connections. But beneath that glittering veneer, the world can be ruthless. It turns on you when you become an obstacle to the wrong people." Westbrook's eyes narrowed in quiet disbelief as she continued. "My family was once influential," Evelyn revealed, her tone carrying both pride and anguish. "My father, Richard Devereaux, owned one of the largest construction firms in the nation. He was a man of honor, respected and revered, until he trusted the wrong partner." Her eyes clouded over as she recalled the betrayal. "Olivia Harrington," she whispered, the name laden with bitter memories. "She infiltrated our world as a strategic ally, but in reality she was orchestrating my father's downfall. Fraudulent deals, embezzlement, illegal transactions, all designed to ruin him. In a heartbeat, everything collapsed. My father lost his reputation, his company, and eventually he was forced into silence." Westbrook listened intently, the revelation striking him like a physical blow. And Evelyn's voice faltered as she added, "After that, everything unraveled. My mother fell gravely ill, and despite my efforts to clear my father's name, the doors closed, one after another. I was left with nothing." Westbrook rose from the sofa, crossing the room to gently lift her chin, compelling her to meet his gaze. "You survived on the streets," he murmured, his voice softening ever so slightly. "Yes," she replied, her tone firm yet tinged with sorrow, "and it was there, amidst hardship, that I learned never to trust anyone completely." Their eyes locked in a silent exchange charged with unspoken truths. "You don't have to bear this burden alone," Westbrook insisted quietly, a rare note of genuine concern breaking through his usual facade. Evelyn pulled her face away, her expression resolute. "I don't need a savior, Westbrook," she countered, though her voice wavered ever so slightly, betraying the vulnerability beneath. He sighed deeply, the weight of his own conflicting emotions pressing upon him. "I know," he said slowly, "but that doesn't mean you should shoulder everything by yourself." Evelyn's soft laugh, devoid of real humor, echoed in the quiet room. "You think you can protect me?" she asked, her eyes searching his for an answer. I want to protect you," Westbrook admitted, the words hanging in the air like an unexpected confession. "And why would I do that?" she pressed, her tone laced with a mix of curiosity and caution. Westbrook's reply was a murmur, laden with uncertainty. "Because I can't explain these feelings. I'm confused every time I'm near you." A long silence followed, as Evelyn studied him with cautious intensity. "And does that unsettle you?" she finally asked. "Very much so," he confessed, his voice heavy with emotion. "Then perhaps it's best if we keep our distance." Evelyn's eyes widened momentarily, her features contorting with conflict. "I can't do that," Westbrook insisted, stepping closer until there was scarcely any space between them. The conversation took a darker turn when the topic of Olivia emerged, a name that carried the bitter sting of betrayal. "And what about Olivia?" Westbrook demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The mere mention of her name stirred memories of ruined legacies and lost honor. Evelyn's gaze hardened as she nodded slowly. "I know exactly who she is, and I won't rest until I settle the score." Westbrook fell silent, the gravity of her words sinking in as he realized the full extent of the web they were entangled in. The tension in the room was palpable as Westbrook's phone rang later that night. The investigator's urgent tone on the other end of the line shattered the fragile calm. "Westbrook, we have a problem," the voice declared. The call revealed unsettling details. Evelyn's true identity was none other than Evelyn Devereaux, daughter of the once mighty tycoon Richard Devereaux, whose empire had crumbled after a scandal of embezzlement. Who is there? And the scandal, shockingly, had involved none other than Olivia Harrington. Westbrook's breath caught in his throat as the full implications of this revelation washed over him. He knew now that Evelyn's arrival in his life was not a coincidence. It was a carefully orchestrated move that linked his past, his pain, and the treacherous ambitions of those who had once shattered his world. Richard Westbrook's pulse pounded with a mix of anger and trepidation as he absorbed the latest intelligence from his investigator. Cassandra, formerly known as Olivia, had discovered that Aurora Devereaux was no longer a hidden enigma, but a living threat, and her next move remained shrouded in mystery. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave. Someone was digging relentlessly for information on Aurora, and Cassandra was orchestrating it with a cold, calculated precision. Clenching his jaw, Richard instructed in a low, controlled tone. "Keep me updated on every detail." As soon as the call ended, a heavy burden settled on his chest. A burden that compelled him to act before Cassandra's schemes could bring irreparable damage. The following morning, Richard found Aurora on the hotel's secluded balcony, a place where the early light met the silent expanse of the city. There she sat on the cool stone, knees drawn close to her chest, eyes fixed on the distant horizon, as if searching for answers in the interplay of shadow and light. Approaching slowly, Richard crouched beside her. "You know Cassandra has caught wind of this," he said quietly. Aurora's gaze was distant yet resolute, and with a trembling sigh she murmured, "I know." Her voice betrayed an exhaustion born of constant vigilance. "She isn't going to stop, and neither will I," Richard continued, his tone a blend of determination and protective concern. Watching her, he noted the disarray in her hair and the weariness etched into her eyes, and something inside him stiffened at the sight. Aurora blinked rapidly as if struggling to contain a single tear, and before she could mask her vulnerability, Richard reached out and pulled her into a firm embrace. "It'll be all right," he whispered, holding her close as if trying to shield her from the storm gathering on the horizon. For a few heartbeats, no words were necessary, only the silent understanding that they were now bound by a common enemy and that Cassandra's impending assault would be met with unwavering resolve. Richard's mind churned with plans and counter-moves. Ever since the tumultuous conversation the previous night, his thoughts had been in relentless turmoil. Discovering that Cassandra had a hand in dismantling Aurora's world, the same Cassandra who had helped shatter the legacy of Aurora's once mighty family, had changed everything. Richard now thirsted not only for revenge on Aurora's behalf, but also for retribution for his own past, for almost marrying a woman capable of crushing lives without a hint of remorse. He vowed to unearth every secret Cassandra guarded, to reveal the depths of her betrayal and to ensure she would pay dearly for her crimes. That very morning, as Richard pored over meticulous reports in his spacious office, his private investigator's call rang through the tense silence. "Richard, we have a problem," the voice said urgently. "Cassandra is moving. My sources confirm she's gathering damning evidence on Aurora. It appears she's preparing to launch a public exposé." Richard's eyes narrowed and he almost dropped the pen he was holding. "What exactly has she uncovered?" he demanded. The reply was grim. "I don't have all the details yet, but she's already enlisted the help of high-profile lawyers and seasoned journalists. If she's mobilizing on this scale, it means she has something monumental in store." In a fit of anger, Richard hurled the pen onto his desk and ran a hand through his hair. "Find out every detail before she makes her move," he ordered, his voice icy, "and warn Aurora immediately." With that, he steeled himself and announced, "I'm heading to see her now." Soon after, Richard arrived at the luxurious hotel where Aurora had been staying. Without hesitation, he knocked forcefully on her door. The door swung open abruptly, revealing Aurora's tense expression as she took in the sight of him, visibly agitated. "What is it?" she asked, the calm in her tone belying the tension in her eyes. Richard stepped into the room without waiting for further invitation and closed the door behind him, his voice low and urgent. "Cassandra is making a move against you." Aurora's eyes narrowed as she absorbed his words. "What do you mean?" she queried, her voice steady despite the underlying alarm. "She's gathering explosive evidence and planning something massive. My investigator suspects she might even expose you publicly," Richard explained, his words punctuated by a mixture of warning and resolve. Aurora's face remained stoic as she sighed and crossed her arms, as though this outcome had been inevitable. "And you're so calm about it?" she scoffed bitterly. "After everything I've endured, you really think a scandal is enough to rattle me?" Richard studied her for a long moment, silently admiring her formidable strength, even as he acknowledged the dire risks they faced. "I can protect you," he assured her quietly. Aurora raised an eyebrow, a trace of a smile touching her lips as she replied coolly, "I told you, I don't need saving." This isn't about rescuing me, it's about stopping Cassandra. Stepping closer, she locked eyes with him, challenging. And what exactly are you going to do, Richard? He cupped her face gently, his thumbs softly caressing her skin as he answered, whatever it takes. For a brief moment, Aurora stood silently, her eyes flickering with a guarded emotion that Richard longed to decipher. I don't want you to get hurt because of me, she whispered, vulnerability slipping through. Too late for that, he replied with a faint, resolute smile. Before she could speak further, Aurora's phone vibrated abruptly. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening as she showed Richard an anonymous message. Be careful who you trust. The past always comes back to haunt you. Richard's eyes hardened as he read the message, a clear warning from Cassandra. She's trying to intimidate me, Aurora murmured, swiftly deleting the message. Richard shook his head. This means we're getting dangerously close to something big, he observed. Aurora nodded in silent agreement. Then we need to act before she strikes again. That very morning, a scandal exploded across the media. Every major newspaper splashed headlines about Aurora Devereaux, a once celebrated heiress whose life had spiraled from opulence to obscurity, now portrayed as a deceptive figure who once played with fire. Cassandra's machinations were painted in stark detail, each article meticulously recounting the collapse of the Devereaux dynasty and casting Aurora as the ultimate villain. At his office later that day, Richard read each article with fury blazing in his eyes. When Aurora entered, he immediately rose, exclaiming, "Did you see it?" Aurora nodded silently and tossed a magazine onto the table. "Cassandra is trying to destroy me again," she said softly. Richard clenched his fists. "That won't stand," he declared, his voice low and fierce. "I never lose," Aurora murmured, her eyes glinting with defiant hope. "Then let's ensure Cassandra loses this time," Richard replied firmly. They locked eyes, a mutual determination passing between them, a vow of retribution, though neither could foresee how it would all end. Later that evening, Cassandra's trap took shape. Aurora received an unexpected invitation to a private dinner at the prestigious Harrington Club, a venue known for its exclusive guest list. Clutching the ornate invitation, she read the elegant script with cautious resolve. Richard, seated in the quiet sanctuary of her room, scoffed at the note. "This is obviously a trap," he said. "I know," Aurora replied defiantly, "and I'm not backing down." Richard's expression darkened as he added, "This is my moment." Aurora's voice trembled with both defiance and determination. "I'm not running." With a deep, steadying breath, Richard said, "Then let's ensure Cassandra is the only one who ends up losing tonight." That night, the Harrington mansion shone like a beacon, filled with select guests whose eyes glittered with anticipation. Aurora entered alone, adorned in an elegant black dress that exuded power and mystery. Richard, already blending with the high society crowd, watched her every move. Moments later, Cassandra appeared, her expression venomous as she greeted, "Aurora, so glad you accepted my invitation." Aurora's tone was icy. "You left me no choice." Cassandra's eyes flickered with anger as she retorted, "I hope you're enjoying the attention. You've certainly attracted every prying eye." Richard's imposing presence by Aurora's side made Cassandra stiffen. "Dear Cassandra," he said coolly, handing her an envelope. As Cassandra read its contents, her face drained of color. Inside were documents, recordings, and signatures, irrefutable evidence of her role in the scandal that had decimated the Devereaux legacy. Cassandra stammered, "This is fake." Aurora's voice was steely. "It's not. And tomorrow it'll be splashed across every headline." Cassandra's composure crumbled as the scandal unfolded in real time, her empire collapsing amidst jeers and shocked murmurs from the elite. Richard Westbrook's eyes gleamed with triumph as he murmured, "We did it!" a victorious smile playing on his lips. Across from him, Aurora Devereaux exhaled deeply, a bittersweet sigh escaping her as she whispered, "I'm starting over." In that instant, Richard felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest, a mixture of hope and the sting of past wounds resurfacing. Determined to help her heal, he stepped closer. "I want to help you," he said, his voice gentle yet resolute. Aurora's gaze was guarded, a flicker of skepticism dancing in her eyes as she asked, "How?" With quiet confidence, Richard retrieved an elegant envelope from his briefcase and pressed it into her hands. "This is a proposal for a new venture. A company that will bear your name," he explained. Aurora blinked in surprise. "What?" she managed, her tone a mix of disbelief and cautious curiosity. "I want to build something for you," he continued, his words imbued with genuine care. "A business of your own, one that stands as a symbol of your independence and strength." Setting her wineglass aside and crossing her arms, Aurora retorted, "Richard, I don't need your charity." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It isn't charity, it's a true partnership. You possess talent and vision far beyond what anyone can measure. I want you to have something that is entirely yours." For a long moment, Aurora hesitated as the weight of his offer settled over her. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she exhaled slowly and said, "All right, but on one condition." Raising an eyebrow, Richard inquired, "And what condition would that be?" Stepping closer, Aurora's eyes locked with his in a challenge that conveyed both defiance and vulnerability. "I do this my way," she declared. A smile tugged at Richard's lips as he replied warmly, "You always do." In that charged moment, the atmosphere between them shifted, becoming warm and intensely intimate, a silent promise of what could be. Unable to resist the magnetic pull between them, Richard gently cupped Aurora's face and leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that spoke of years of hidden emotions and unspoken desires. It was a kiss free of barriers, raw, passionate, and desperate in its need to communicate what words could not. As Richard held her close, as if fearing she might vanish like a fragile dream, the world around them faded into insignificance. When the kiss ended, Aurora pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his before she softly whispered, "Good night, Richard," and then turned, leaving him standing alone in the dim glow of the room. In the days that followed, their lives took a decisive turn. Devereaux Consulting was born, a strategic investment and analysis firm that became the embodiment of Aurora's resilience. She threw herself into building her new empire, assembling a dedicated team and reconnecting with influential contacts. Throughout this transformation, Richard remained steadfastly at her side. Never imposing, yet always present, he supported her growth with quiet acts of kindness. A fresh cup of coffee left on her desk every morning accompanied by a cheerful note. Spontaneous dinners that blurred the line between business and intimacy, and thoughtful surprises that slowly softened the barriers Aurora had built around her heart. One evening, amid the steady hum of their shared successes, Richard could no longer contain the feelings that had been steadily growing within him. With a sincerity that cut through the ambient noise of the bustling office, he confessed, "I'm in love with you." Aurora blinked in astonishment, her heart pounding as she turned away. "Richard? I know it's too soon," she replied, her voice wavering. "But I can't pretend anymore. I'm just not ready for a relationship. I've only just begun to reclaim my life and I need to focus on that." Richard's face fell momentarily, pain evident in the depths of his eyes, but he nodded slowly. "All right," he murmured, accepting her truth with a heavy heart. Aurora managed a soft smile, acknowledging his understanding, even as she held firm to her resolve. Yet Richard was not one to yield easily. In the following weeks, his persistence became a quiet constant in her daily life. Whether it was a freshly brewed cup of coffee waiting on her desk, or an unplanned dinner that straddled the realms of work and romance, he made sure his support was unmistakably felt. There were even small, heartfelt gestures. A bouquet of white lilies accompanied by a note that read, "I know you like coffee more than flowers, but I hope these brighten your day," that stirred something deep within Aurora. It wasn't merely a bid to win her affection. It was an unwavering commitment to stand by her side through every challenge. As Devereaux Consulting flourished, Aurora gradually began to regain control of her destiny. Yet, despite the strength she projected in board meetings and business events, she could not ignore the subtle shifts in her heart every time Richard smiled at her. At a high-profile industry event dressed in a sophisticated navy blue ensemble that commanded attention, Aurora navigated the room with grace, exchanging pleasantries with top investors and CEOs. Amidst the crowd, she became aware of a watchful presence. Liam Bisset, a renowned French investor with dark, intense eyes and an air of refined charm, approached her with a courteous smile. "Miss Devereaux, it is an honor to finally meet you in person," he said, extending his hand in a gesture that veered from the conventional as he softly kissed the back of her hand. Aurora returned a polite smile. "Mr. Bisset, the pleasure is mine," she replied, maintaining her composure despite the unorthodox advance. Liam's charismatic presence was palpable as he remarked, "Business can wait for a moment, don't you think? May I have this dance?" Though Aurora hesitated briefly, she eventually consented, her mind too preoccupied to assign any significance to the gesture of dancing. Liam led her gracefully onto the dance floor, and for those fleeting moments, their synchronized movements suggested a rare harmony. "You dance very well, Miss Devereaux," he complimented, to which she responded with a cool remark about the importance of a strong presence in both business and life. Yet, as the music dwindled, a new tension began to emerge. From across the room, Richard's serious gaze fixed on Aurora, his eyes darkening with a familiar, piercing jealousy. Ignoring the polite greetings around him, he strode purposefully toward her and Liam. Upon reaching them, he addressed Aurora in a firm tone. "Aurora, may I speak with you for a moment?" Liam's polite smile faltered as Richard's presence cast an unmistakable shadow of disapproval. "It seems your friend doesn't appreciate sharing attention," Liam murmured lightly, only to be met with Richard's cold response. "You've had your dance, But. Now, if you don't mind, I have more important matters to discuss." Aurora's temper flared as she clutched Richard's arm and pulled him into a quieter hallway. "What was that, Richard?" she demanded, her voice laced with anger. "I couldn't bear to see that man hitting on you." Richard, running a hand through his hair in frustration, countered, "And that gives you the right to act like a complete idiot? Did you not notice the way he was looking at you? He wasn't even interested in business. It's my business, not yours." After a tense pause, Aurora's voice rang clear. "I'm not yours, Richard. You have no right to be jealous." As she tried to leave, Richard followed her to the parking lot, calling, "Aurora, wait!" In a heated exchange, she spun around, her voice trembling with both defiance and exasperation. "What more do you want?" Richard's reply was fierce. "I want you to listen. I've had enough." The air between them crackled with explosive tension until, without warning, Richard pulled her close and kissed her, a desperate, angsty kiss laden with anger and longing. For a brief, suspended second, Aurora's resolve melted and she reciprocated, yet as reality rushed back, she pushed him away, her voice firm. "You can't do that." Richard's eyes, dark with desire and regret, pleaded silently as she climbed into her car and sped away, leaving him amidst the cold night air. The following day, in the quiet solitude of her office, Aurora's mind was tormented by the lingering memory of that kiss. She tried to concentrate on her reports, yet the passion and conflict of the previous night haunted her every thought. Just then, the door opened abruptly and Richard entered. "You can't just show up unannounced," she remarked, not looking up from her work. "I came to apologize." When she finally met his eyes, his expression was a mixture of remorse and undeniable longing. "For the jealousy or for the kiss you stole?" she asked softly. Richard sighed, admitting both. With a heavy heart, he excused himself, leaving her to her documents. In a playful aside to those following the narrative, he even urged readers to type Coca-Cola in the comments, a nod to the complexity of their intertwined lives. Later that night, as Aurora left the office, she noticed something alarming by her car. The window was scratched with crude etchings. One word stood out: beware. Her blood ran cold as the realization struck her. Someone was trying to intimidate her. Though her instinct urged her to call Richard immediately, she hesitated, caught between fear and the need to remain resolute. Richard Westbrook's heart pounded as he examined the fresh scratches on the car window. A crude message had been etched on the glass proclaiming, "Alone you won't get anywhere, know when to quit." The ominous word, scrawled in haste yet filled with malice, gave Aurora Devereaux no choice but to act. Without a moment's hesitation, she picked up her phone and dialed Richard's number. On the second ring, his familiar steady voice answered. "Richard?" "What happened?" Aurora asked, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "Someone vandalized my car and left me a threat." Richard's silence was brief before he spoke with firm resolve. "I'm on my way." 15 minutes later, Richard pulled up beside her vehicle. He stepped out and carefully examined the damage, his expression hard and focused. "Are you okay?" he inquired, genuine concern in his tone. Aurora crossed her arms, her eyes dark with determination. "I'm fine. You know I can't ignore this," she replied. Richard immediately pulled out his phone and contacted one of his trusted private security contacts. "I need you to retrieve footage from the local cameras. Find out who did this, now," he instructed curtly. Aurora watched as Richard took control of the situation with the ease of someone accustomed to handling threats. Despite her reluctance to rely on others, in that moment his presence provided her with a profound sense of relief and reassurance. When Richard ended the call, he turned to her with a serious expression. "Until we figure out who's behind this, I'm arranging extra security for you." Aurora shook her head lightly. "Richard, never." Over the following days, tension mounted as Richard discovered that the attacks on Aurora's burgeoning company were orchestrated by one of Cassandra's former associates, an individual desperate to block her rise. Determined not to be intimidated, Aurora promptly arranged a meeting with the man. Together with Richard, she made it clear that she would not back down. "Did you think you could scare me?" she stated in a calm yet steely voice during their confrontation. "Let me be perfectly clear. I've lost everything before, but nothing will make me retreat now." The man, visibly shaken and swallowing hard, realized that resistance was futile. After that decisive meeting, the attacks abruptly ceased. Though Aurora had proven herself a formidable opponent, the victory had an unexpected side effect. As the danger subsided, she began to notice that Richard had not merely shielded her from harm, he had been there every step of the way, offering support and protection even when she tried to manage on her own. This unwavering presence forced her to question the barriers she had erected around herself, making her wonder if she might finally allow someone to draw near. One evening, as Aurora was absorbed in reports at her office, Richard entered with a small, neatly wrapped box and casually tossed it onto her desk. "It's been 3 months since you launched the company," he said softly. Aurora picked up the box and opened it to reveal a silver keychain engraved with the letter A, a symbolic token meant to represent her independence and strength. "To celebrate," Richard added. A warm smile spread across her face as she murmured, "Thank you." For a moment, Richard's eyes softened as he observed her reaction, before he gently inquired, "Will you ever stop running from me?" Aurora's heart pounded as she searched for the right words. "Richard, I know you feel the same way," she began haltingly. "Last night, I saw it in the way you worried about me." Her voice trailed off as she hesitated, uncertain if she was ready to admit her own feelings. Sensing her inner conflict, Richard reassured her. "It's okay, I'm patient." When he left the room, Aurora exhaled deeply, feeling that she was on the verge of giving in to a love that both frightened and captivated her. The next day began as any other, with Aurora arriving early at the office and immersing herself in her work. Since the attacks on her company had subsided, she had focused all her energy on expanding her business. Yet, throughout the morning, an unsettling absence gnawed at her. Richard had not called, nor had he dropped by, as he usually did. By 8 o'clock in the evening, unable to ignore the growing unease, she grabbed her coat and drove to Richard's penthouse. When Aurora arrived at the building, she rang the doorbell several times. Receiving no answer, her heart raced as she retrieved the spare key Richard had given her for emergencies. She quietly unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was dimly lit and shrouded in silence, save for the low hum of a television. That's when she saw him. Richard lay on the couch, covered by a thin blanket, his face pale and his breathing shallow. Aurora rushed to his side, placing a tender hand on his forehead. "Richard, you're burning up," she said in alarm. Slowly, his eyes opened as he recognized her presence. "Aurora," he murmured, his voice weak. "It's just the flu," he tried to reassure her. "I'm taking you to the hospital," Aurora insisted, reaching for her phone. But Richard gently grasped her wrist. "No, I just need rest," he replied, managing a fragile smile. "If I go to the hospital, they'll take my blood, and you know how much I despise needles." Frustration mingled with concern in her eyes as she retorted, "You're impossible." Richard closed his eyes, exhausted. Determined to help, Aurora moved to the kitchen and prepared a cup of hot tea, along with a damp cloth. Returning to the living room, she knelt beside him and carefully placed the cloth on his forehead. "This will help lower your fever," she whispered. Richard's eyes softened as he looked at her. "You didn't have to come," he murmured. "Yes, I did," Aurora replied firmly, her voice laden with meaning. That night, she stayed by his side, making tea, changing the cold cloth, and even falling asleep on the floor beside the couch, her head resting gently near his chest. When Aurora awoke the following morning, she felt the tender touch of Richard's fingers in her hair. "Did you stay here all night?" he asked, his voice now stronger. Blinking, she responded, "You were in bad shape, I couldn't leave you." Richard smiled, running a hand over his face. "I feel much better now, thanks to the best nurse in the world." Aurora chuckled softly before standing to prepare breakfast. She meticulously arranged fresh bread, sliced fruit, orange juice, and strong coffee. Returning with the tray, she found Richard watching her with a new, affectionate expression. "I love you, Aurora," he confessed, his voice sincere. For a moment, Aurora froze. "Richard, I know how you feel," she admitted softly, recalling the tender care he had shown her the night before. There was no need for pretense now. She returned his sentiment. "I love you too." With joy lighting his eyes, Richard pulled her into a tight embrace. "You never give up," she teased, a mixture of laughter and heartfelt warmth in her tone. Later that day, Richard surprised Aurora by insisting she take the day off. "I want to take you somewhere special," he said, leaving her curious. Soon they arrived at a secluded cabin on a private beach, a hidden haven where the gentle ocean breeze mingled with the golden hues of the setting sun. As they stepped out of the car, Aurora was rendered speechless by the breathtaking view. "Richard, this is beautiful," she whispered. They spent the afternoon walking along the shore, sharing dreams and memories as the tide whispered secrets at their feet. Later, seated on a weathered rock, Richard took a deep breath and confessed, "Before I met you, I was arrogant and self-absorbed, only chasing power and ambition. But you challenged me. You were the first who dared to defy my expectations, and that changed everything." Aurora's heart tightened as she listened, feeling a profound transformation in his words. "You made me a better man, more human, more humble," he continued. After a thoughtful pause, Richard produced a small box from his pocket. Aurora's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Aurora Devereaux, will you marry me?" he asked softly. Without a moment's hesitation, her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Yes." Richard slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing their commitment with a passionate kiss as the sun dipped below the horizon. In that moment, with the ocean's lullaby and the warmth of their newfound bond, Aurora and Richard knew there were no more barriers between them. Their lives had intertwined irreversibly, and as they returned to the cabin hand in hand, they embraced the promise of a future filled with love, courage, and endless possibility. Richard Westbrook and Aurora Devereaux spent that unforgettable evening wrapped in the magic of their love. In the softly lit dining room of their private beach cabin, a table was elegantly set with fine china and crystal glasses, while the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a soothing symphony. "You're cooking, Aurora," Richard teased, his eyes twinkling as he admired the perfectly plated dish before them. Aurora's cheeks warmed as she smiled coyly, proud that every detail had been arranged to create an atmosphere as unforgettable as the love they shared. "I wanted to impress my fiancé," Richard replied, pouring a generous amount of wine into their glasses. Aurora picked up her glass and raised it in a graceful toast. "To us, to our future," she said softly, her voice full of promise and hope. Richard clinked his glass against hers and whispered, "To the love of my life." They drank deeply, savoring both the wine and the moment, their laughter mingling with the gentle murmur of the ocean outside. As dinner drew to a close, Richard took Aurora's hand, leading her out onto the terrace for a dance under the starry sky. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" he asked, his tone laced with nostalgia as he guided her slowly across the terrace. Aurora's smile grew as memories of that bustling business event flooded back. "I remember, I was insanely jealous," she admitted, a playful note in her voice. Richard chuckled and replied, "I was too, but now I know I never had to be. You were always meant to be mine." Aurora rested her head on his chest as they swayed gently, lost in a moment where every worry dissolved under the canopy of twinkling stars. In that quiet dance, Aurora realized that she would never have to run from her feelings again. Months later, the day they had both dreamed of finally arrived. Aurora, once a woman who had fought her entire life to survive on her own terms, now stood radiant in a flowing white gown, ready to embrace a new chapter as she prepared to say "I do" to Richard. The wedding ceremony took place in a breathtaking garden by the sea, where the gentle murmur of the ocean blended with the soft rustling of white blossoms that adorned the altar. Elegant chairs were arranged in perfect symmetry for the guests, and the entire setting exuded an air of ethereal beauty. Richard stood at the altar in a sleek black suit, his heart pounding as he waited for Aurora. When she appeared at the aisle, his breath caught in his throat. She was stunning. Her hair cascaded in soft waves, and the delicate fabric of her gown flowed gracefully with every step. Yet, what captivated him most was the sparkle in her eyes, a reflection of hope and resilience, born from years of struggle and renewal. As Aurora reached the altar, Richard gently took her hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." Overwhelmed with emotion, Aurora felt tears well up in her eyes as the officiant began to speak about the power of love, partnership, and the beauty of building a life together. When it was time to exchange vows, Richard took a deep breath and began, "Aurora, from the moment I first saw you, you challenged me in ways I never expected. You never bowed down or accepted things blindly, and that strength is what made me fall in love with you. You taught me that power and wealth mean nothing without someone by your side to share life's joys and sorrows. I promise to love, respect, and make you happy every day of my life." Aurora's eyes shimmered with tears as she softly replied, "Richard, I spent so many years fighting alone, convinced that I could never trust anyone. But you were persistent. You never gave up on me, and today I know I never want to live without you." They exchanged rings, and as the officiant declared them husband and wife, Richard pulled Aurora into a passionate kiss amid a burst of applause from their guests. Their honeymoon was nothing short of perfect. They traveled to enchanting destinations, savored each moment together, and upon returning home, their life as a married couple blossomed even further. Richard made it a point to spoil Aurora with small, everyday gestures, delivering coffee to her in bed every morning, preparing spontaneous dinners, and always ensuring that she felt cherished. Aurora reciprocated by creating a warm, loving home where laughter and romance intermingled with the challenges of everyday life. Yet, as their shared life progressed, Aurora began to feel an unexpected change. Despite the joy that enveloped their days, she grew increasingly tired and occasionally overwhelmed by a strange nausea. One morning, while alone in the bathroom, her heart pounded as she peered at a pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 distinct lines confirmed the news: she was pregnant. Emotions surged through her, and tears streamed down her face as she realized that she and Richard were soon to welcome a new life. When Aurora went to the doctor for confirmation, the surprise deepened. She was expecting twins. Rushing home with the ultrasound in hand, she found Richard waiting. "Aurora?" he asked, his voice laced with concern as he saw the look of wonder on her face. Gently, she placed the ultrasound in his palm and said, "Richard, we're having twins." His eyes widened in astonishment before a joyous smile broke across his face. "Oh my God," he laughed, pulling her into a tight, elated embrace. "We're going to have 2 little miracles." Aurora laughed through her tears, whispering, "I love you so much, Richard." Their love, already a fortress against the storms of life, now expanded to include the promise of a growing family. In the following months, their days became an emotional roller coaster filled with anticipation and tender care. Richard's protective nature grew stronger as he lovingly ensured that Aurora was pampered and never overwhelmed by her new reality. At a joyful baby shower attended by friends and family, they proudly announced they were expecting a boy and a girl. Richard held Aurora close and whispered, "We built an empire together, and now we will build a family." Aurora smiled, her heart brimming with happiness, knowing that she finally had everything she had ever dreamed of: a loving partner, a beautiful home, and the promise of a future that was as bright as it was boundless. As their celebration continued into the night with heartfelt toasts and shared laughter, guests were invited to rate the couple's extraordinary journey, a story of transformation, resilience, and the power of love. And as the evening drew to a close, the soft murmur of the ocean and the gentle glow of the moonlight became the backdrop for a final, unforgettable moment between Richard and Aurora. They danced once more under the starry sky, their future together as luminous and infinite as the heavens above. And that was the heartfelt story of Richard Westbrook and Aurora Devereaux, 2 souls once broken and lost who found each other amid the ruins of the past. From misunderstandings and pain to trust, love, and finally a home with 2 little miracles, they wrote a love story worth remembering. This story reminds us that no matter how dark the past may seem, no matter how deep the wounds, if you have the courage to believe, to love, and to forgive, happiness will always find its way back. What about you? Do you believe love can heal even the deepest scars? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. If you made it to the end, leave a secret keyword in the comments. Peaceful. So I know you're someone who truly felt this journey. See you in the next video.